Hey guys, Bike here, and I'm back again with another Last Epoch build guide video. This one is for the Paladin. This is Judgement Paladin. Yes, I know this build is, was very popular at the start of the season, but before we go any further, all gameplay that you were watching is taken at Corruption 1052. So, yeah, this build kind of took the whole Last Epoch Season 2 by storm. Shout out to Volca over on the Max Roll team for this one. This is where I took a look at his guide and sort of built what I was doing off of it. Obviously, this has been a very popular build that has been adopted by many people. I received many comments from you guys during the 4 streams I had on here, giving me some tips and tricks and the amount of times that you've played the build and, here's what you learned. And I really appreciated it. And it's for that reason, I feel like 4 days hasn't been enough for this build. So I'm actually going to be playing this some more. So you might be asking the question, Bike, why are you releasing a build guide now if you're going to be playing it some more? Well, I've already pushed it past 1,000 corruption. I think I have a good idea of where I'm going with this build. So in the description down below, there's going to be a couple links. There's going to be one link to Volca's video build for the max roll. That's in the link down below. There's also going to be a link to a loot filter, a guide to how I do my loot filters, as well as a planner of what I currently have on this character, as well as a planner. It's not like premium in-game, this is best in slot. This is kind of like a planner for using the gear I have, but a couple like alterations. Like, I think this would be fine. I think we should shoot for this type thing, if that makes sense. So that's going to be all in the description down below. So let's talk a little bit more about this build. As you can see in the gameplay, it clears pretty freaking well. It's not the fastest. The clear speed on this build is kind of average, but the survivability and the durability of this build is bar none. I had a really great time with the build. When I started this character, I already had a level 100 character. All right, I already had a level 100 Paladin. This is seasonal. And I already had a bunch of items in my stash. And I should mention that I am a Circle of Fortune Andy. So all items that I found on this build were found through Circle of Fortune. But nonetheless, most of the items were already in my stash. I didn't really have to look too far. So yes, I only played it for 4 days, but it's not like I started from scratch, right? But during that time, I found that the build was very tanky, extremely durable. Even though the clear speed was a bit average, the tankiness made up for this in all forms of content. And as you guys are watching, like, there's nothing really special here, but nonetheless, it's still doing a decent amount of damage, even at 1,000 corruption. And with a lot of builds that I have played, if you notice, like, there comes a point in builds with Bike, if you will, that my health kind of goes kind of thing. I'm like making like a motion with my hand as if you can see it, right? But nonetheless, like, the health kind of drains down to the last 1,000. Basically, I hit endurance threshold, and then it pops back up due to all the healing, leech, all that other stuff. But with this build, we don't even get there. For the most part, it just stays full, or if I take a really big hit, oh, heaven forbid, I lose like half my health. So the build does a really good job in monos. Like I said, it makes up for the clear speed with the tankiness. So let's talk about some bosses. This is the Black Sun timeline. This is my favorite timeline. This is several people's favorite timelines, and I think a lot of people treat this boss fight as a pretty good indicator of what the build's capable of. Again, this is Corruption 1052. All the modifiers are over there in the corner. And we clear the boss pretty well. Even at Corruption 1000 plus, I'm sitting here just tanking the hits that he's just shoveling out there. It is fine. It's fantastic. Harbinger, he does less damage than Rye, right? So if I could already take Rye's hits, I can just sit there, tank this guy for the entire time. Aberoth, no big deal either. This guy, we can go through him pretty easy. We can tank all his hits as well. This is regular Aberoth. I just wanted to point that out. This is regular Aberoth. This is not Uberoth. But nonetheless, I will show you Uberoth. I did make several attempts on Uberoth. The thing is, I would get to for the runs that I had enough patience for, I would get to about 50% health. And then I would die due to something. There's just a lot of screen vomit, if that makes sense. There's just so much of those little black things sitting on the ground. It's pretty annoying. You can tank through a lot of stuff, but eventually you just start to get whittled down. The thing is, I need more damage on this build than what I currently have. I've missed several key slams. That's a video in and of itself of just all the failed transcribers, gravers, slams, but nonetheless, I want to spend some more time with it. Like I said, I've only been with the build for 4 days, so let's see what we can get. Anyway, guys, let's wrap this all up and jump into the game. But real quick, if you like what I do here, possibly leave a like, possibly subscribe if you like the content, if you're really into Last Epoch. And I mean, especially if you like Sentinel, I'm going to keep covering the Sentinel class even into next season when hopefully they don't get nerfed into the ground. But guess what? I'm still going to be playing Sentinel. If this jives with you in all of those regards, then come on. Let's go for a ride together. And also in the description down below, links to everything that is relevant to this build. Anyway, let's go. All right, here we are in game. So let me give you a brief breakdown. Anybody who's seen my videos as of late, my build guides, know what to expect. We're going to be going over a demonstration of how the skills work, what we got on the bar, that sort of thing. Then we're going to go over the gear, the idols, the blessings, the skills, and then the passive tree, and then we're going to go ahead and get out of here. If there's anything that majorly changes with the build, I will post an update to this. But as far as I'm concerned, this build guide is pretty much final. If I do manage to kill Uber Avaroth, that will be a video, and I will post a planner in there. But for the most part, I think I know where I'm going with this. Plus, a lot of you have probably played Judgement Paladin, so this is less of a build guide and more of a what did Bike do type thing, which is Bike didn't do a whole lot of different things. I did kind of mix in a few different things, but nonetheless, let's get into it. So if you haven't played Judgement Paladin before, this build heavily uses a system in the game called skill queuing. Essentially, if we look at our bar, you start all the way to the left and you move to the right. It's like reading left to right, left to right. So anything that's being pressed will override the next skill. So let's put Vengeance here. If you see, I'm pressing Vengeance. I'm now holding down Judgment. Judgment's not being cast. Why? It's reading left to right. And since Vengeance does not have a cooldown and does not cost any mana, and I'm not running out of mana, it's just going to keep casting Vengeance until I let go of Vengeance. So one thing you could do is hold down both and then sort of do one thing or the other. This is what I was doing originally, right? This is what I was doing originally, but I had several people tell me, hey, you're going to want Vengeance all the way to the end, right? So what I was doing, just to, show you guys, hold up, let me put that back on. I would put Vengeance here. I would put Judgment here. I would run up to this thing. And then I'd be doing this. And this is all well and good, but for this build, you're really, I must stress this because it was stressed like this to me. You're going to want to put Judgment here. Then you're going to want to put Vengeance here. Trust me, this is just going to go that much smoother. So now that we have that out of the way, let's go ahead and demonstrate what's going on. So this is a boss. Let's say this is a boss. Say hello, boss. What's up, guys? Okay. Enough of that. So we're running through a monolith. Here's the boss. We run up to him, and boom. We hold down both Judgment and Vengeance at the same time. So here's what's happening. Whenever I have enough mana, it's casting Judgment because it's over here. And then when I'm out of mana, it's going automatically back to Vengeance by default. And you do this until the character is dead. So if you're doing it the other way that I was doing, right? If you're doing it the other way I was doing this sort of thing, I mean, you get okay results, but it's just going to be a lot simpler for you if you hold down both at the same time. If you can, mix in Holy Aura, but really the idea here is to use your Judgment and your Vengeance like that, and then your other skills barely get touched, right? You would use your symbols of hope as a DR, in a pinch if you can see it coming. Healing hands right now is a traversal skill, right? So you use it, it goes on cooldown. We are casting healing hands via vengeance and judgment. It's still usable even if this is on cooldown, and it's not being triggered. The cooldown of the traversal is not being triggered when we use judgment and vengeance. So that's a pretty brief breakdown of the build. I've been having a good time with it, so let's go ahead and jump into the gear. Now, I tried to follow max roll pretty closely, but there's a couple different things. Let's start with the helmet. Not the same rolls as what they recommend on max roll, but basically you're going to want health, healing hands, and then strength. I do agree with this decision that Volka put out there. I don't have it. I have this. I think this is cool. I could make a copy of this helmet if I wanted to. I could try and do like a rune of removal or something, but I don't really want to mess with it at this point. This is all right. You could do better, but I think this is just fine. Transcriber's Graver. This has been my, this has been a thorn in my side. So the main reasons why we use Transcriber's Graver, it's a very fast base attack. You can get 2 LP pretty easily, and it comes with Elemental Pen and spell damage baked into the item. It's very good. I tried using my tried and true Polaris just because you can get 3 LPs so easily. I even found another 4 LP. I thought about using it with this build, but that didn't happen. Anyway, I've been having such a difficult time trying to get T7 melee attack speed and T5 or even T7 spell damage onto a Transcriber's Graver that I finally decided to slam a 3 LP Polaris just to see what would happen. And essentially, after doing a DPS test against the boss dummy here, I'll show you. Essentially, the damage right now with my current Transcribers and my current Polaris is similar. It's similar. In fact, the Transcribers is actually still just a little bit better. Even than this, I was thinking with Polaris, even though we're not spec'd into Smite, I could benefit from the spell damage per 2 strength and then the extra Smite. But the fact of the matter is, having all this baked in spell damage as well as the Elemental Pen that we get, it's just, unfortunately, Polaris can't keep up. Now, if you're doing a build similar to this where you were spec'd into Smite and you're doing a decent amount of damage with Smite, this could be a conversation, but I think that's just a much different build. So yes, Transcriber's Gravers, best in slot. You're going to be trying to get increased melee attack speed and spell damage here on this sword. Null Portent, I think, is just a good pickup. You get the melee damage leech's health, you get the leech rate, you get the health, the physical resistance, and then we get the damage reduction. Now, I'm not capped, right? What I mean by capped is, in case you don't know what Null Portent does, I feel like most people do at this point, but let me give you a brief. I mean brief, like I'm talking about less than a minute. Essentially, here's what you want to do. Oh, I got like a little moth in here on my screen. Okay, essentially what you want is you want to have each of your resistances at about 115%. At that point, you're going to get the maximum 20% less damage taken. The way Null Portent works is it works per resistance, right? So each resistance, the magic number is 115. 115 or higher, you're going to get a 20% damage reduction per resistance. You take fire damage, 20% damage reduction. You take lightning damage, so on and so forth. So it really behooves you to have that sort of resistance in there, but I'm not going to prioritize it. If it works, it works. If not, it's fine. As you can see, we got some areas where we're going to be getting that damage reduction. Right now, I got to work on my poison resistance, but for the most part, Null Portent, probably best in slot. You could use a Champion's Regalia as well. What you're really going to be looking for is the mana gained on hit, gained when you use Vengeance and hit at least one enemy. I think this is the one you're going to want. Try and get whatever armor you're wearing. Try and get a T7 17 mana That's the one you're going to be looking for. You can do a T5. It will work, but you're going to want to try and get this. So whether that be a Null Portent or a Champion Regalia or something else, you're going to want this affix on there. Okay, Countess Majasa, this thing's just absolutely cracked. You're going to want block chance and block effectiveness. Essentially, this is one of our main forms of damage mitigation against dots for most things. Not much can be said. So you might be wondering, why am I using a copper amulet? A copper amulet, right? Because the build guide calls for an Orion's Eye. Chat, let me let you in on something. There's 3 pretty rare defensive items in the game. One is Orion's Eye. I don't even have one. I can't show you. The other one's Red Ring, and the other one's Ravenous Void. These are pretty uncommon, kind of rare. Most of y'all have probably heard about Red Ring. Ravenous Void is probably not super common, nor is Orion's Eye. The build guide calls for Orion's Eye. I haven't found one yet, but what Volca said is get yourself an Orion's Eye and get T7 increased elemental damage over time. If you can't find one of those, I think an Oracle Amulet or a Jade Amulet would work out just fine. I say prioritize the T7 increase elemental damage over time, and then whatever else you want to throw on there. Fire Pen, damage over time, which is what I did. Health. I think these are all great pickups. The Copper Amulet is probably not the best. It's not the best. But we can make it work. This is what I got right now. This is helped with the damage. Okay, let's talk about one of my biggest regrets. Yeah, you might be wondering, what's wrong with this ring? Well, I used to have this ring. I had it duped. And this has just been a downgrade altogether. So, let's take a look at this. Now, Volca in his build guide says you need elemental damage over time as well as healing effectiveness on the rings. Right here, you're looking for a 2LP Sunwreath and then a 2LP Flames of Midnight. If you don't know what Flames of Midnight is, it's this one. It helps you move faster. This would help with the clear, but honestly, what I'm getting out of this ring is just insane. So, Volca says, yo, grab yourself a 2LP Flames of Midnight. You get a little extra ward, you get a little extra damage. You know, the main thing you're using this for is you get the Fire Pin. Fire Pin's pretty nice. Don't get me wrong, Fire Pin's very nice. But you also gain Swiftness. Swiftness is pretty cool, as well as Ward Decay Threshold. Thing is, I had these rings. They were just so freaking good. I had it duped. I'm still pretty salty over this. Essentially, I had, the elemental damage over time, the strength, the health. It was just way too powerful to give up. I found a 3LP Sunwreath. I was thinking this would only be worth it if I could slam this ring onto this ring and get the health, and the elemental damage over time. And then, whatever damage I would lose from the strength would be made up for by the increased fire damage and the increased fire damage over time. Well, as you can see, I didn't get the elemental damage over time. So essentially, losing the +2 to all attributes and increased cooldown recovery, as well as the increased elemental damage over time, this ring is just straight up a downgrade over what I had with this. Even with the rolls that I have on this ring, which are very nice, it's just a bit of a damage downgrade. Nonetheless, Sunwreath is not too bad. You can get a lot of damage onto here, but if you have something like this, I would say just keep this. Flames of Midnight, if you get like a 3LP Flames of Midnight, you could slam something like this on there. So this is one of my main departures. I'm not using a Flames of Midnight. I will admit that Fire Pin is pretty good. Seeing that I'm going to be spending a little bit more time with this build, I'll go ahead and check it out. This ring right here might be a good reason. That amount of Fire Pin is pretty nice. Not going to lie. Anyway, moving on from my biggest regret. Immolator's Ablation. I've used this belt many times before. It comes with baked in cleanse, ignite duration. Main reason why we're using it. Chance to gain frenzy for 2 seconds when you directly use a fire or necrotic skill per stack of ignite on you. So essentially, if you have 10 stacks of ignite on you, and this gives you a 5% chance to gain frenzy per stack of ignite, that's a 50% chance, right? 50% chance to gain frenzy for 2 seconds when you directly use a fire or necrotic skill. And I think that is the main reason why you would want to use this belt. The spell damage you get, I mean, it's there. It's something. But for me, it's the chance to gain frenzy. Essentially, more judgment means more damage. That's essentially it. More judgment, more damage. Sure. The spell damage per stack of ignite on us, it's whatever. Great belt. I love the fact you can get frenzy with it. I don't want to poo-poo the spell damage too much. The spell damage is something. If you have like 12 stacks, let's look at this. You have like, it's hard for me because like, okay, so let me show you. I was doing Uber Aberoth, so we were just cleansing everything. So we're cleansing all the ignites on us essentially. So it's hard to build up ignite stacks. But if you look right here, we got 12 stacks. All right, we got 12 stacks. Well, we had 12 stacks. It went away. I'll let that cool down. You know, fighting Uber Aberoth, you want that cleanse, which is yet another reason why I feel like if you're cleansing yourself constantly with this, that spell damage isn't really going to do much for you. But that frenzy could still be pretty effective. But nonetheless, if you have 12 stacks, 2 times 12, 24. That's 24 flat. Spell damage for fire, you could use that. All right, I'm done. Immolator's Ablation. Moving on. Okay, Wing Guards. Wing Guards are pretty good. You get the armor, you get the endurance, you get the increased melee attack speed. We're using Judgment. I guess I should have said this earlier, is a melee ability. So we're benefiting from all this melee attack speed. I got pretty lucky with this one. I got 2 LP and I was able to get a pretty nice T5 hybrid health on there. We also get the chance to gain haste. We can't deal crits, but this entire build is dot based. Yeah, Wing Guard's pretty good. You could use something else. These are pretty common. The Hand of Judgment gloves, right? These are pretty common. You can even find them with 4 LP. Now, I don't think this is worth using. On its face value here, where it says you gain all these extra benefits if you're not wielding a weapon. I don't think it's worth it. We get all that extra melee attack speed that we'd be giving up, as well as what we get on the Wing Guards. What you would want, the attunement is fine. You'd be wanting the fire pin, but giving up all that extra melee attack speed, I don't think is worth it. Plus, this gives us a chance to proc haste. You can proc haste on hit, which could be useful, especially if you want to pair it with a particular kind of boots. So let's go ahead and discuss the particular kind of boots. So for me, I've been using Stymied Fate. You can get a huge amount of damage over time, as well as an additional chance to gain haste on hit for 1 second and a chance to apply Doom. But the max roll guide calls for Advent of the Erase, and I got extremely lucky with these. I was getting ready to record this video. I'm like, okay, let me take Advent of the Erased. Let's use the rune right here, the Rune of Weaving. If you didn't know, Rune of Weaving, if you have something with Weaver's Will on it, you use a Rune of Weaving. It'll kind of reveal some of the affixes on the item for you. Nonetheless, I got extremely lucky. I got T7 movement speed and then T5 strength, T5 poison resistance, whatever. You'd probably want health, but nonetheless, T7 movement speed would be the main thing that you want with something like Advent of the Erase, and I got it. I'm ecstatic. So I might actually use these, but nonetheless, the max roll guide calls for this. You get a lot of You can get a decent amount of ward out of this. Every time you gain haste, you also gain up to 56 ward, up to 60 ward. This one's going to gain 56. Also, while you have haste, you take less damage over time. This one's kind of a low roll for me, but you can have up to 35%. And then a chance to gain haste doesn't matter. We have haste chance right there. But I have been using Stymied Fate because you can get up to 120% increased damage over time. I think that's very worth it to me. Though going up against Uber Aberoth, I might end up using Avid of the Erase some more. But for the most part, just running through 1,000 Corruption, I think you'll be fine with Stymied Fate. Gives you a little extra damage, all that good stuff. Let's talk about Twisted Heart. So there is something that is not making sense to me. If you look right here, I just used all my mana. But if you look, I am not gaining or losing any health for using an elemental spell. So if we look right here, Judgment, it's a fire spell. It's melee, damage over time, area, strength, attunement. I don't know what's going on here. Because 8% current health converted to ward when you directly, and I am directly, casting an elemental spell. The only thing that I could think of is that since this also has the melee tag, it isn't working. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking because it has the melee tag, it's not working. If you look right here, we have to directly use it. If we directly use Healing Hands, it works off of Healing Hands. It didn't do much, but we did lose some health, and then we gained some ward. But for some reason, it's not working with Judgment, and I don't know why. And here's how I know that it does recognize that Judgment is a spell. If you look, we got plus 25 to Judgment. And if we look right here, we gain +1 in necrotic spells and +1 to elemental spells. But we're not getting the benefit of directly casting an elemental spell, losing 8% of our health and converting that to ward. The ward, you might be wondering that you've been seeing, like, how am I getting all that ward? That's actually coming from Healing Hands. It's coming from Healing Hands right here. Synthesis of Light. Ward per 10% increased healing effectiveness right here. So the more healing effectiveness we have, we gain more ward. And we're casting the Healing Hands when we use Vengeance, Cleric's Hammer. So we attack this guy, bam, we're just gaining some ward. So when we're doing something like this, right, we're just constantly casting Healing Hands. That's where we're getting all that ward from. We are not gaining the benefit of 8% of current health converted to ward when you directly cast an elemental spell. Kind of wish I knew that. I will admit, when I looked at Volka's guide, I looked less at the guide and more at the stuff he had on there. I might have missed this section on Twisted Heart. So I will admit that this might be my own bad here. But yeah, Twisted Heart of Icaros. Let's talk about why I'm still using this. Well, why are you still using this bike? Well, it gives you up to 20% increased health. I got 19% on this one. +1 to elemental spells. Very nice. Up to 15 strength, up to 16 strength. That's a T7. Cast speed, we don't use it, so it doesn't matter. So, but if we look at that increased health, that's like a T6. All right, that's like a T6 on the implicit right there. If you can get 19, 20%, that's T6 increased health. The +1 to elemental spells, Gucci, golden. And then the strength, very nice. That's like a T7 in and of itself. This item is loaded. Sadly, we're not getting to use the benefit of it. But what else could we use? What else could we use with this? Oh, bike, tell us. Well, a good replacement is just any relic, right? You could use any relic. I don't know. I don't think I would recommend Anchor of Oblivion. You could use something like a Tome of Elements. give you a little bit of leech, but I don't think this is worth it. I don't have it, but you can use an Ashes of Orican. It comes from it comes from the Soulfire Bastion dungeon. That one can give you up to 100% increased health. Also, you can use a good old fashioned Soulfire, get 10% more spell damage to ignited enemies. This could work, but I would say probably the number one thing you're going to want to use, and I actually got one. You're probably going to want to use something like this. Go to the erase, get yourself a T7 to Judgment. This is going to be hard because this is Weaver's Will, but you get a +1 to all Sentinel skills, increase armor, percentage of your armor mitigation also applies to damage over time. You also receive a bit of a minus mana cost on your melee skills. Judgment is a melee skill, so you could get this. The fact of the matter is, though, 16 strength, nuts. Up to 20%, in this case, 19% health, nuts. Extremely hard to replace, even with other options like this, but this is an option. I wanted to point it out for you guys. All right, and I think that is all pieces of gear. My regret, the belt, no important. We did just, yeah, that's everything. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about the idols. I need to grab something real quick for you guys. Hold up. Wait a minute. A bit unprofessional. This is what you're looking for. All right. This is what you're looking for. So what you probably want on this build is these particular idols. But here's the thing. You're going to want healing effectiveness and block effectiveness. If you don't have those idols, I'm going to say it right now. Don't use them. Here's why. Because these idols exist, right? You can get up to 25%. 25% healing effectiveness on these. And these are pretty common. You can get a bunch of these. And they're hybrids, so you can also gain some health, right? So if you're using this and you have anything less than healing effectiveness and block effectiveness, I feel like you're wasting your time. Yes, I understand you can slam this, you can get some extra goodies on there, but 4 of these, right? Because this is a 4-banner, right? 4 of these, and if they're all like around 20 plus, at max, it's going to be more than you can get on this. You can get up to 95% healing effectiveness on this. Plus, you're going to get the health. The main reason why you're going to want this is all that block effectiveness. And look, we can gain all this resistance and, you know, all that other good stuff with these idols. So I'm going to actually recommend, this is Bike speaking, get yourself an adorned Raye idol, but only if you can get both increased healing effectiveness and block effectiveness. And then you can slam whatever you're looking for on there. So if you look in the planner that I include in the link down below, the sort of, you know, Envision planner, I do have like 4 of these included with what I think would be a good pickup. We shall see. We shall see. But for the most part, I just recommend, if you don't have these, get yourself a Throne of Ambition and then just throw in any resistances you're lacking. And then I'd say just prioritize these small idols. Get yourself as much healing effectiveness as possible. And then what I did here is I just grabbed some extra health. All right, I just grab some extra health and stuff. That's it. Pretty short on the idol section. Let's go ahead and talk about the end of time, the blessings. All right, so I've said this multiple times. I'm going to say it again. There's 10 echoes. So 5 and 5, you have 5 echoes that give you, like, you know, some sort of magic find bonus, and then you have 5 that give you player power. So for the magic find sort of thing, that's this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. Take what you want. I'm not even going to go over it. Let's just talk about the 5 that give us player power. So in the Black Sun, I went with the spell damage. This is a recommend from Volca. He said, go ahead, take this one. I think that's cool. But if you find yourself, if you find that you're in a pretty good position, you could opt for not spell damage, leeches health. You could opt for what's the word? You could opt for health, but I think for the most part, spell damage, leeches health is just fine. Ending the storm, health regen, highly recommend it. Yeah, go ahead, grab yourself some health regen. Reign of Dragons, I went for all res, 20%, cannot be understated. It is fabulous. Spirits of Fire, going for the armor, highly recommend. And then the Age of Winter, highly recommend you take block chance and block effectiveness. This is the one that you are going to want. And if you look right here, I have 101% block chance. Now, we did have a T7 block chance on our shield, but yeah, we're block capped. We're block capped. And that blessing is in part something we can, yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of going off on that. Take the blessing. That's what I'm going to say. Take the blessing. Let's get into the skills. All right, Judgment right here. So my build does look a little bit different. I did take a point out of here and a point out of here to do 1 point, 1 point, so I can take cleansing ailments. For the most part, I copied exactly what Volca recommended. So for the most part, you took the 5 points, the 2 points. This right here is just literally a damage upgrade, right? The Consecrated Ground, right? This is where all the damage is coming from. Not the hit. This is where all the damage is coming from. So you make that last 100% longer. That's 100%, more opportunities, so to speak. Consecrated Ground, healing effectiveness, not too bad. Ignite chance, not too bad. Mana efficiency. This is okay. I liked this. I wish I could put some more points into this, but it's fine. 5 points into Flaming Soul. You're going to want as much here and right here. This is just more damage against the enemies. This is just not a lot of nice, good, solid damage. This right here is pathing. Right? This right here is just pathing. 1 point, 1 point. We're trying to get to Urgent Inquisition. This is what makes the build right here. No cooldown, plus 40 mana cost. This is what absolutely makes the build right here. This is what's going to allow us to just spam the Judgment as much as possible. You need this one to work. And then, like I said, Holy Eruption and Cleansing Light. This allows us to cleanse ailments. Let's go over Vengeance. Vengeance right now is set up very much as a defensive and stat boost ability. So 1 point into Disarming Strike, Frailty Chance, Smelter's Vengeance, a little bit of Armor Shred, Flaming Sword gives us a fire conversion, as well as Ignite Chance right here. We convert the damage of Vengeance into fire. 2 points into Bolster for that, less damage taken and armor. We're going to go up here, grab Dark Duelist. Whenever we use Vengeance, we gain a 20% global more damage bonus. And then I opted for increased attack speed right here. There we go. Pretty much the same way Volca sets up his. I think I took a point out of here and put it into here just for a little bit more attack speed. A little bit more attack speed means a little bit more mana gain. A little bit more mana gain means a little bit more Judgment. This one I followed Volca's recommendation to a T. Notable acquisitions are the Redemption, increased healing 40%, and Firestorm, 50% increased global fire damage. I always take Shelter from the Storm and Purification. It's a good pickup all around. Symbols of Hope. So instead of taking increased damage right here, which is still a possibility, the reason why we're able to, for me personally, but the reason why we're able to maintain all this block chance is we now have 5 symbols of hope, right? The polygram gives us an extra symbol. The tetragram gives us an extra symbol, and we start with 3, right? So now we have 5 symbols. With the 5 symbols, we gain 3% block chance. 3 times 15, 3 times 5, 15%. There we go. 3 times 15. Yeah, that's going to be pretty nuts. But 3 times 5, 15%. We also gain the block effectiveness. This is how we're able to make it work. If you had any extra points for Symbols of Hope, put it right here. Empowering Symbols. Get as much damage into here, but I do agree with this setup. You could take some points out of Iron Symbols here. Right, you could take 3 points and put it over here for a little bit of extra damage, but I feel like endurance threshold per symbol is just way too strong. Way too strong. This is what helps us stay alive. But if you are hurting for damage, put a couple extra points right here. All right, Healing Hands. I followed Volka's guide to a T, essentially. The only difference is I tried to put a couple extra points into Prayer of the Fallen. You need to at least have 2, so you can grab 2 points in Urgent Healing. And then what I did is I put an extra point here. His guide called for 22 points. I had 23. I'm guessing they didn't take into account Twisted Heart. So what I did is I put an extra point into Prayer of the Falling for a little bit more healing effectiveness. And then for the most part, this is how we rolled. A Synthesis of Light. Really important that you get all 3 points in there. This is a damage reduction. And then Sun Shroud, Immune While Moving. Very good for Uber Aberoth because there's just so much stuff on the ground. All right, let's go ahead and jump into... All right, sorry about that. Something loud was going on outside. All right, we're getting into the passive tree. So let's go ahead and talk about that, and then let's get out of here. All right, 6 points into Juggernaut, 8 points into Fearless. This is going to give us some strength and vitality. And then 1 point into Stalwart for that 3% block chance. 5 points into Armor Clad. Adds armor and reduces the damage you take from nearby enemies. No points into Valiant Charge. This is what Volko recommended, so this is what I took it. I might take a couple points out of Fearless and put him into Valiant Charge. Just having that increased cooldown recovery speed for movement skills, Healing Hands being a movement skill now. It could be nice to be able to traverse a little bit more, but nonetheless, this is the current setup. 5 points into Time and Faith. Very important. You gain 10 mana per use of Vengeance. This helps us gain a ton of mana. So every time, essentially what's happening is we gain 10 mana from here and then 17 from the affects when we hit an enemy. Now, what's cool about this one, you actually don't need to hit an enemy to be able to proc it, if that makes sense. You don't actually need to hit an enemy to be able to do that. Now, this one, you need to hit an enemy. So to get the max 27, you need to use Vengeance and hit at least 1 enemy. Otherwise, you're only going to get 10. Still, not too bad. All right, so that is Time and Faith. And then 5 points into Blade Master. We're using a sword, so we gain 30% attack speed. We're going to put 5 points into Weapon Master for that 10% increased melee attack speed. We are not putting any points into Steel Aegis because we already are block chance capped with a T7 max rolled block chance on our shield. Going over to Void Knight, 5 points into Abyssal Endurance. This gives us 5% less damage taken from void and physical damage. Bam, there we go. And then the rest of our points is all going into Paladin. We're going to do 5 points into Defiance. This is going to give us elemental resistance as well as endurance threshold per 2%. Uncapped elemental resistance. We're going to do 1 point into Phoenix Strike and 1 point into Raye Strength. This is going to be our only source of fire shred chance. 3 points into Honor gives us a 3% block chance. 7 points into Heaven's Bulwark gives us spell damage with a shield and reduced bonus damage taken from critical strikes. 5 points into Valor gives us some endurance and increases our healing effectiveness by a bit. Mainly, we're taking the points here to make up for our endurance. Without this, we are not endurance capped. 5 points into Holy Icon. This gives us health regen, as well as health, necrotic resistance, and some healing effectiveness. 5 points into Sanctuary Guardian gives us 15% all res with a shield, as well as armor and cast speed. We don't use the cast speed. 4 points into Shield Wall gives us block chance, as well as less stun duration and health gained on block. Then 5 points into Righteous Firebrand gives us increase melee attack speed, as well as fire pin per 100% increase healing effectiveness. So, you know, if I can ever get more healing effectiveness onto this build, we get some more fire pin out of it. 12 points into Reverence of Duality for that, you know, just massive amount of increased health and damage. 4 points into Divine Essence, excuse me. Where did I get Divine Strike from? I don't know. 4 points into Divine Essence. You have a chance to be granted a Divine Essence each second. Essentially, 4 points at this point while you're on high health. You gain a Divine Essence, last 10 seconds, grants us 15% increased armor, healing effectiveness, and it also reduces damage over time that we take. 5 points into Covenant of Light, increase Holy Aura and Symbols of Hope effect. 6 points into Covenant of Protection. Health regen from Symbols of Hope is increased. We also gain armor and armor mitigation applying to damage over time. 5 points into Covenant of Dominion gives us some increased damage, as well as mana regen from Holy Aura. Here's the thing. I haven't really messed with this at all. I just follow what Volka said. So I may tinker around with this. I do need some more damage. That I would keep this just for the melee attack speed, as well as the healing effectiveness. But I would probably try and put some points here into Conviction. You know, maybe take them out of Covenant of Protection and Covenant of Dominion, possibly. We could also gain a lot of... I don't think we're attunement stacking too much, but I could see putting some points into here. But for the most part, I have left this alone. Anyway, guys, that is the build guide. Thank you so much for being here. If you like what I do, possibly leave a like, possibly subscribe if you want to be up to date with more Last Epoch content. Again, as a reminder, in the description down below, you will find links to all that good stuff. Anyway, you guys take care. Peace out.